Hi, I'm Shane McGonigal. I'm sitting here with Jimmy Norman, who's a candidate for State Senate of Georgia, District 49. Jimmy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Shane. How are you?
I'm doing very good. What made you decide to run?
I've just been dissatisfied with the direction our country's been going for years. Just too much government, too much control over our lives, too much intervention, too much regulation. It doesn't make sense. And all of that at too high of a level. So.
You describe yourself as a Christian Constitutionalist. The first question I'd like to ask you about that is, when you think about the Constitution, at least the federal Constitution, you know that it's about states' rights, and a lot of the things that are in the federal Constitution don't apply to the state of Georgia. As a Christian Constitutionalist, how do you plan to use the principles of the Constitution in order to do your duties as a legislature in the state of Georgia?
I think that really goes to the issue of the balance of power between the states and the national government. Basically, the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 lists what the Congress can do. And they've done so much beyond that we really have a limited number of choices as to how to deal with that. And I think the most prudent is for the states to stand up and say no, and resist the unconstitutional advances that have been made in Congress.
Very good. As a Christian Constitutionalist, which I believe is a term that you coined, can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, I'd be happy to. In fact, first I'd like to tell you why I call myself that. I used to call myself a conservative and a Republican, but those words have been so co-opted by so many people with diverse values and opinions that they're virtually meaningless now. In our district, it's considered a conservative district. Everybody says they're Christian, everybody says they're conservative, regardless, just about, because that's kind of the minimum standard to be in the race. So I was looking for something more meaningful. And I put the Christian first to emphasize that it's not just a token add-on. I believe with the Christian culture. I mean, it's actually the reality of it to me. I believe Jesus Christ was God in the flesh. I mean, I base my faith in my life on that. So that's the most fundamental thing to me. And politically, it has the effect of defining the two core principles that are in documents that I can refer to and that other people can point me to. It's basically, I think legislation, government in general, well, life in general, should be consistent with the Bible and should be consistent with the Constitution. So as a legislator, it makes my life fairly simple, because anything that is inconsistent with biblical principles or inconsistent with the allowance of the Constitution, I'm against. So I don't have to decide if it's a good strategy for doing something that shouldn't be done according to either one or both of those other documents.
Very good answer. Mr. Norman, what are some other issues you think are important in this race, besides the obvious one being states' rights, as you've stated before, and adhering to the principles of both Christian principles and the constitutional principles?
Well, basically, I sum mine up in three things. I believe the government is supposed to, protect our lives, liberty, and private property. So in terms of life, I believe the only safe assumption is that life begins at conception. So I don't want to answer to God for not defending that position. So while some may argue, it may be one, it may be another, I say the only safe thing to do is assume life starts at conception, and I'm pro-life, and I believe that life starting at conception deserves legal support. So that's most of the life issue. Although I was called to account on my brochure because of the way it was phrased. Somebody said I wasn't totally pro-life because I believed in the death penalty for capital offenses. So I want to say that I do agree with the death penalty. And both of those are biblical principles. They're protection of life, but rights given by God can, under some circumstances, be taken away. So life, you can kill people who are mass murderers. You can put people in jail, take away their liberties if they've done other crimes. You can fine people for doing the wrong thing, which takes away their private property. But those three things, the life, liberty, and private property, are protected unless they're used as a penalty. So if you don't do anything wrong, you should be able to keep those. And the government should protect you from other people taking them.
Very good. property tax has been another issue in this race,
Mhm.
as well as the income tax and things like that. Some candidates are in support of something like the fair tax. Where do you stand on that issue?
I am in support of something like the fair tax, but first of all, I'd like to go to the one key thing that's different for me, and that is property tax. I do not believe it's the role of government to tax private real estate under any circumstances, if possible exception of foreign ownership. But generally speaking, if a citizen owns property or an American corporation owns property, I don't think they should have to rent it from the government. Otherwise, they don't really own it. And that's part of the fundamental right to property that I think our government was based on. And I think it's a biblical principle. I mean, the right to private property is pretty strongly implied when the Bible says, "Thou shalt not steal." That obviously means somebody has the right to own their property. So I want to completely do away with real estate taxes. And I think that would help our economy, help this real estate industry, which is in a mess right now. Property values would go up, and it would be a real incentive for people to live here, to retire here, move here, have businesses here. I think it would really help our economy.
Sounds very good, Mr. Norman. I want to remind voters in District 49 that the special election is May 11th. And so if you're going to go out and vote that day, please vote for Mr. Jimmy Norman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your vote.